Senator Rhiannon? No? Oh, Senator Ludlam, sorry, that's right. Senator Ludlam, we're going to you then.
Thanks.
I think you've got about 15, 10 even.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. All right, thanks. Go, Mr. Irvine. Can you just firstly tell us whether ASIO was consulted and your degree of engagement with the Attorney-General's Department about the reference that has been provided to the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Intelligence and Security on reforms to national security legislation?
Absolutely, Senator. Yes, we were involved. We were active participants in the preparation of in the consideration of those matters.
Did you have some coverage of the discussion paper that was released to the public with the committee's terms of reference, and also did you have input into the terms of reference themselves?
I'm not sure the extent to which we had input into the terms of reference, but we certainly had involvement with the preparation of the paper, and our views were sought.
Okay, thank you. Could you explain in as specific terms as you're able, without compromising sort of operational security that you're always at pains to protect, what ASIO is currently unable to do under the current structure of the laws surrounding surveillance and interception of communications in particular, that the reforms that have been proposed and put to the Joint Committee would allow you to do?
There are quite a number of reforms proposed, as you know, but in relation, for example, to the issue of the retention of data, at the present time, call and data is retained by some service suppliers and made available to ASIO under appropriate authorisations. The difficulty that we face is that whereas most of that data 5 or 10 years ago was retained for billing purposes and therefore was readily available, as we move increasingly into the new technological IT age, the availability of that data, which is absolutely crucial to both to law enforcement, but particularly to the national security function, becomes less and less available. And we do need that data.
Yeah, I understand that you need it, and I've heard that contention made before, that I guess this is fixed line billing records. As people are abandoning landlines, that whole data set is being eroded. I guess that's the purpose. What nobody seems willing to concede is that there are gigantic categories of data and metadata that didn't even exist 5 years ago. You never would have had, for example, the ability to track people who are carrying mobile phones about. So it's not that you're losing, it's not just that you're losing a record and therefore need to maintain it somehow. There are vast quantities of data sloshing around now, categories that never even existed a few years ago, that you are seeking additional access to that you wouldn't have had access to before. Is that a reasonable proposition?
The basic principle is whether data which people used for communications was available 5 or 10 years ago, and whether data which people use for communications, however much the communications have changed, is available today. And the fact is that what we need to be able to do is to have access to communications data that will enable us to carry out our functions.
Okay.
And it's really very, very important that we do have access to that data.
That didn't really answer my question. Do you concede, for example, that there's a huge amount of collateral that has nothing to do with communications? For example, depending on your phone settings, a smartphone handset these days will record very accurately your precise location everywhere you take the phone. That's nothing to do with communications. It's just something that these devices record. That category of metadata or communications data didn't exist 5 years ago. Certainly not across the entire population.
It did exist if you go back to the basic principle, because you knew where the telephone was.
Yeah, that's cute. Now we have a population where these devices are almost ubiquitous, that actually track your location every minute of the day that you're carrying it about. So I don't want to labour the point here, but I'm a bit overhearing that we're losing access to what we had before and we just want to maintain what we always had. To me, that is actually a bit disingenuous, because there are huge categories of data that didn't exist before.
And all right then, Senator. Let me also say that if there are new categories of data and they assist in the law enforcement function and they assist in saving lives by our having access to them, then I think my argument still stands.
Do you think intelligence and law enforcement agencies should have to apply for warrants before this data is accessed?
I believe that we must continue to apply for warrants where we are accessing the content of people's communications. Absolutely. That is there's a level of intrusion there that I believe absolutely warrants having warrants.
Yeah.
With regard to the other, look, if you had to get a warrant for every time you needed to access call-associated data, the whole system would be gummed up and come to a stop.
Okay, this is consistent with what the Federal Police told us earlier this afternoon. I'm puzzled at the distinction that's drawn that you consider accessing somebody's phone calls or reading a stored email has a degree of intimacy to it that would require a warrant and also a serious crime being pursued, but that precise locational data of where you are and all of your social network mapping, all the people you know and communicate with, shouldn't qualify that degree of privacy protection. Could you please describe for us why you think that distinction is appropriate?
Look, it simply comes down to, if you like, the level of intrusion.
You don't think being able to track people's precise locations amounts to any form of intrusion?
But not certainly not as great a level of intrusion.
Yeah, that distinction really puzzles
listening
me.
to the conversation. Well, look, that's my view.
Understood. Okay, that's your view, and it's shared, I should say, by other people that I've put this question to.
Can I just make also the point
Of course.
that we are simply not tracking everybody. When we ask for certain information to be retained, it is so that we can have access to it if we need it.
Yeah.
But it is this is not a system of sort of constant surveillance. And can I stress again that in relation to internet usage, as was said this afternoon, we are simply not looking to track everyone's internet usage.
No, but
or even to have data on people's internet usage stored.
Okay, that is somewhat at odds with what we've heard before.
I don't think it is.
Well, no, it really is. But I'll come back to that in a moment. Mr. Wilkins, could I just quickly take you up on the document that was tabled earlier by the Federal Police in words of any length of which you choose? Sorry?
Did they table another document?
No, I believe it was the Federal Police
one I
tabled.
tabled.
Yeah, the metadata
Yep.
document. Can you just describe for us which agencies that document applies to and what its standing is? So, for example, would ASIO be required? Does ASIO using the same term of art as
you
was
wanted to
tabled before?
know. Yeah, this is an attempt for your benefit and the benefit of other senators to explain what is meant by metadata.
Yep. I
That's
just want to know
basic.
what status that document has. Is that the same language that ASIO uses when they're...
It has really no status except that agencies who are concerned about having access to metadata in the way that ASIO and the Federal Police have just explained to you, have this characterises what we mean. You've asked, and not only you, the other committee has asked, what do we mean by metadata?
Mm-hmm.
And this is an attempt to explain exactly what we do mean by that.
And I'm working from the same document.
Okay, that was a simple answer. Thank you. But that document doesn't have any formal legal standing, does it? You said before that's how it's interpreted, or that's how it's meant to be interpreted.
No, it doesn't. But insofar as you want to know what we mean, this is what we mean, actually. And
Yep. It's good. I have not seen that form of words before. Was that created in anticipation of somebody putting that question to you this afternoon or this evening?
No, because, I mean, it is something that we need to understand for the purposes of the other committee.
Yep.
And also more generally, this is something which has not suddenly jumped out. It's been a matter that's been exercising a lot of stuff in the media and around
certainly.
the place.
Mr.
It's probably
All right,
useful to try and be
one
clear.
question left. Senator Ludlam.
Oh, I better make it a good one. Can you just describe for us then, and maybe we'll just stay on this theme for a moment, when that document was created and how wide its distribution is? So, for example, I've heard that local governments are also making requests under the TIA Act. Welfare agencies, the tax office, ASIC, are they all in possession of that document? Every officer who is in a position to apply for this material?
No, they're not. They're not, actually. I mean, this is an attempt to distill for the purposes of current discussion and debate.
This is quite recent.
Sorry?
It's quite a recent formulation then?
It's a recent formulation, but it actually just distills a lot of other documents and thinking, including what's happening in Europe and places like that, that is around in terms of characterising metadata. That's
where a data retention regime is just found to be unconstitutional by the German courts. Anyway, I think we're out of time. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Chair.